Hello, hey there, thanks for tuning in. My name is Zach. This channel is mostly science fiction and fantasy book reviews, but once a week I do a weekly wrap up of what I've been reading for the past week, what I'm currently reading, and since this is already the start of November, I'm going to also recap what I read for the entire month of October and looking ahead for the month of November. So it's a weekly / monthly wrap up here on the channel. So thanks again for tuning in and stick around for what I've been reading, what I'm most excited about reading, and then later what I'm excited about watching and what I actually watched. So with that said, yes, what I read for the entire month. Looking back, it was a pretty solid month in October. Got a decent number of reading done. Usually I'm a one book a week reader, just with the commuting, lunch breaks, weekend breaks on bike rides. But this past month, we also had a road trip, so that gave a little bit extra reading / listening time since I am primarily an audiobook listener / reader. So what I read this month, to start off at the beginning of the month and classifying this as what I maybe started in the previous month, but what I finished in October. The first one on the list is The Sword of the Lictor by Wolfe, which is book 3 of Book of the New Sun. So this is a series I've been currently working through on the pace of about one book a month, just because I've been getting it through the Audible subscription. So it's one book a month with Audible credits. And book 3 was, in a summary, pretty good. It's still Severian's journey, and I'm excited to see how it ends. But I guess it's a bit of a spoiler because I finished it this weekend. So at that point when I was reading it, I was excited to see the final end of the journey, book 3 of a 4-book saga for Book of the New Sun. And it's just been a crazy, like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This is Severian's Bizarre Adventure. Book 3, there's too much spoilery stuff that's late in the series to go on, but he just encountered some more crazy events and leading up to the finale, which I did finish this weekend, but technically that was November. So in looking back in October, another mid-series book that I finished was book 2 of Malazan, Book of the Fallen, and that is Deadhouse Gates. This is a book that I'm probably going to record my review of this weekend because I've just been thinking about it and haven't been able to really coalesce what I want to say, because there was definitely a lot of positive things, but some things didn't hit what I see other people talk about in reviews. So the big event of book 2 of Malazan is the Chain of Dogs campaign with Coltane's Chain of Dogs campaign. And it didn't really have the emotional impact that it seems to have had on a lot of other readers. Maybe this is a thing that you appreciate more in hindsight with future events in the series, but just reading book 1 and then into book 2, I really enjoyed the plot threads that carried over from book 1. Even though we do follow mostly new characters, there were some, intertangled or threads that carry over from book 1, and that's what I loved. I loved hearing about the adventures of the bridge burners, even though they're off doing their thing and we're following a different set of characters for the most part. But we do see Fiddler again, we do see Apsalar and Crocus. They come back, and for everything, I'm a big world building reader, so I loved hearing about Ikariam's journey with meeting the Talani Mass, which is always great as we learn more about what the gods are doing, how they're interfering, what their plans are, how they got to where they be, the Warrens, what exactly are the Warrens. So there's a lot of really cool world building interspersed, I guess, outside of the Chain of Dogs campaign, which is the more military focused story of Coltane, on this rebellion / army chain of people that he's dragging. And it was okay, but I just liked the other story so much more, that the Chain of Dogs wasn't as impactful as other people seem to love that story part the most, because I guess it's the most human part of the story or part of this book, whereas I love the world building and just getting these glimpses of Erikson's crazy world in Malazan. So but I enjoyed it. It was not like an all-timer. I really love Gardens of the Moon, but Deadhouse Gates, maybe it's going to be a little bit lower in the ratings for me. So that was the next book that I read. And then to mix it up, I did read 2 nonfiction books in a row, almost back to back. And there's another one coming up later, but the 2 back-to-back ones was first The Data Detective, 10 Easy Rules to Make Sense of Statistics by Tim Harford. This is a book that I buddy read with a former classmate, Patricia, and we did a review over on our podcast channel about data and analytics. And it's an interesting book, again, sort of in the vein of Freakonomics, and it's kind of how statistics can be used to influence people's decisions, either for good or for bad, just how to use numbers, how to look at things more critically. This is kind of one of those general knowledge sort of nonfiction books. And then on maybe a similar vein, but similar but different, I read Enshittification, Why Everything Suddenly Got Worse and What to Do About It by Cory Doctorow. This book I actually liked a lot because it specifically deals with the mainly tech and just technology in general, not just the tech sector, but technology in general. And enshittification is his term that he coined of basically how mainly SaaS products, like, not just SaaS products, but online products and platforms specifically, they first start extracting value from like investors, then they extract value from the users, and it's kind of getting worse on both ends. Like in a marketplace, the user of like Facebook, for example, is getting a worse experience, and then the people that pay for Facebook, aka the ad buyers, are also getting a worse experience on their end as kind of the company optimizes both sides of the marketplace platform. So an interesting read. And again, a immediate example that comes to mind, that because we just replaced our printer, but it's printers, and how, yes, you can no longer use third-party ink because there's a chip in the ink, and then by circumventing that by using a third-party chip, you're breaking the encryption, and there's a law that you can't, like you're breaking into the printer by installing a third-party ink cartridge. And just some of these crazy rules like that. Like, yes, you have to buy only approved ink nowadays, or subscribe to HP's infinite ink program, things like that. That's just our world getting enshittified by everything being online and everything being a paid subscription service that eventually degrades over time. So interesting book, very relevant in 2025. And then, yes, after 2 nonfiction books, I was back on my sci-fi fantasy kick and reading some of the highly regarded online books. And the next one was one that I've been meaning to read and finally get around to it, and that is Christopher Ruocchio's Empire of Silence, the first book in the Sun Eater saga. This book, I was honestly a little hesitant because, again, just the general vibe when I hear about it on best of lists on YouTube or on Reddit, of course, is that it's very similar to Dune, which is an all-time favorite. I've got the posters, 2 posters here. I've got the books over here. I am a lifetime Dune fan. I read it growing up in high school, so I've been with Dune almost my whole adult life. I love Dune, and as a book that I definitely see the parallels, especially at the beginning. It feels very like Dune at the beginning. I was like, okay, is Hadrian an Atreides? But no, he's kind of a Harkonnen, because that happens and he goes on, his dad's kind of an evil Baron leader, but he still controls a planet, kind of like Leto. So it's an interesting dynamic, and we eventually, as the book goes on, it gets further away from Dune, but it definitely pulls from Dune. Inspiration, you've got shields, you've got houses, you've got a lot of these ideas. And then after reading this book, I watched some YouTube interviews with Christopher Ruocchio, and he sounds like the coolest dude because he loves Dune. He loves Book of the New Sun, which I'm currently reading and enjoying. So I love that he's such a fan that it's more of an homage than like a rip-off parody. So I see the inspiration, and that's maybe what drew me into the book even before I watched the interviews. Is I liked how it felt very familiar. I sort of knew the world and what I was getting into, and my mind was making the connections of, okay, this is how things should work. But then, of course, he goes different than I would expect sometimes in the story, which is a good thing because it keeps me on my toes. So it's not, again, it is not a carbon copy of Dune. It inspired by Dune, pays homage to a lot of the great ideas that Frank Herbert had, but it's its own thing. I loved it. I really, really, really enjoyed Sun Eater. I thought it was a great ride. I could not put it down. I finished it in a very short amount of time. I just found every excuse to come back and keep reading it. It had all the elements I liked. I love the looming kind of alien in the distance that we're trying to figure out. It felt like The Expanse. The journey and the retelling felt very similar to Book of the New Sun, how Severian is telling his tale in the far future of his early days. That's what Hadrian's doing. Lots of homage to Dune, of course. Yeah, it's really great. I really vibed with Sun Eater. And then after Sun Eater, I again picked up a second book in a series, and that was my hold came through for Jade War, book 2 of the Greenbone saga by Fonda Lee. This is a book I wasn't quite so excited on. So with that said, the problem with Jade War, or not the problem with myself with Jade War is I feel like I should like it because it has a lot of elements that I enjoy in like movies. I love how the Greenbone saga is an homage to like 90s, early 2000s golden age of Hong Kong cinema with triads and gangsters, and yeah, it's got martial arts, and it's super powered martial arts because they have Jade and they enhances their abilities. So I love superheroes. I love golden age of HK cinema. It's got like these elements that I love, like Asian inspired fantasy, superpowers, Hong Kong inspired fantasy. It sounds good on paper, and this book, again, it was okay. I like the characters better than book 1. I think it was an improvement over Jade City, that now we're into the Jade War. The characters are more developed, and that's some things when I notice on book 2s, either kind of I love it or hate it as we know the characters, because on the one hand, you don't have to do all the exposition. You can just kind of get to the action, or on the other, maybe sometimes it's too much and you want more development. But I thought it was good that we are introduced to like a new faction, because the world expands outside of just John Loon. So it's no longer just the island. We've heard in the first book about the other nations, but now they come to the forefront into the mix. So it's not just clan on clan warfare. It's still no peak and mountain. They're still like fighting, but now you have the third, I guess it's sort of in America, or it could be a London. I guess it's kind of vague what it is. I took it as like a San Francisco Chinatown, but now we're dealing with one character who goes overseas and experiences another culture, living in another culture, and they travel and they're like emissaries sort of to the other culture. And I like that extra dynamic. I thought it added a lot to the story, and it made me, enjoy the book more. I wasn't a rabid fan like I was for Empire Silence. Maybe it's because I read it back to back after Empire Silence, but it was still good, and it was better than Jade City. So, and it's only a trilogy, so I'm excited to finish up and just like complete one and finish the Greenbone saga by Fonda Lee. And then lastly, the last book that I snuck in right before the ending of the month with end of October is Halloween, all that craziness this past weekend, was Breakneck, China's Quest to Engineer the Future by Dan Wang. This book, I think I saw it on, I think it was like a Daily Show interview or something. I definitely saw it on YouTube, or it was a New York Times article, but the premise sounded interesting. It was examining China's rise, but this time through the lens of their philosophy sort of as a government. And the premise he makes, and I think this is what drew me into it, reading the interview with the author, was how the United States is a lawyerly society and China is an engineer society, and how that influences how things are done for better or for worse. So the U.S., of course, has a lot of legislation. You can sue people, and all of our leaders, or a large percentage, have law degree and lawyer kind of backgrounds. Whereas in China, by comparison, a lot of top leadership for the country have engineering degrees, and that's a different mindset versus a legal degree versus engineering, building versus litigating. And by the end of the book, we see tons of examples like the one-child policy and how China thinks like an engineer at times to build things, and how they can turn a dial on people without necessarily looking at the consequences. whereas the U.S., by comparison, the author argues we lost some of that engineering edge that, of course, we built a lot post-war up until like the 70s. But yeah, nowadays it's very hard to get major projects on rolling, I guess, in general. Yes, the roads too, but things like infrastructure, big buildings, America doesn't really build anymore. And they use examples like those famous examples of where projects get stalled because they happen to endanger like a small wildlife. There's like a bird or a fish that could get endangered by the project. And again, is that a good thing for society or a bad thing? Should we be? And at the end, he of course argues for like the middle ground, that we probably need to build a little more like China, but maybe not so much like China, without regard for, of course, some of the consequences of this building. So there is, I guess, a balance. And his argument is China needs to shift a little more rule of law and impact studies on people, and U.S. needs to start building more and get back into that game to catch up with the future. So he argues, of course, like warfare in the future, you can't like fight without building things. So who has the advantage right now? A lot of things like drones and technologies are built in China, whereas the U.S. doesn't manufacture as much anymore. So he also makes the case like that, which I thought was an interesting perspective. You can't look at it blindly as just like roads. You have to think of national defense and other considerations. So anyways, it was an interesting book. I really enjoyed it, and I listened to it on the car ride. So we finished it in like a day because that's all you can do in the car and driving around upstate New York. So that's what I finished in the month of October, even though, yes, at the end of the month, I started a few books. And this past weekend was technically already November, so I finished it in November. And that's my next segment here is what I read this immediate past weekend, so technically next month. So this is my normal weekly vlog, and what I finished. What I finished this weekend was, Citadel of the Autarch by Gene Wolfe. So I did finish book 4 of Book of the New Sun, technically in November, but I finished book 3 at the start of October, finished book 4 at the start of November, but I'm done with Book of the New Sun. It was not really a satisfying ending because it's sort of open-ended. I don't want to spoil it, but it was a very intense ending. It puts the whole rest of the book in perspective. Like people sometimes say that, yes, you want to go back and read the rest of it now because it recontextualizes a lot of the earlier events, and it didn't really like blow my mind per se, but it was like, now it makes sense. And I want to read everything again because I want to see how that led, where we get in the book 4 and what it all means and what did I miss. It was a book that was, or I guess a series in general that was very difficult to follow. I had to pay attention like really strongly as I was listening to this. I usually speed up sometimes between 1.5 to 1.7. This is definitely like a 1.5. I had to go slower because I wanted to catch every word. I had to think about the sentences and what Wolfe was talking about in these paragraphs. What's Severian's doing? Who are all these people? What's going on? It was a total, rush of a series. Even though the books are short, it's like one long book. If you like think of it in terms like a Sanderson novel, I think all 4 books are probably the equivalent of maybe one Sanderson book. Like lengthwise, I think they're about like 8 to 10 hours ish each. So total like 40-ish hours. I mean, that's like the same length of, like one long Sanderson book. So it's one big story sort of divided up into 4 chapters, and it's really hard to put into words, but that's my quick overview of the entire series. But I really enjoyed my time with Book of the New Sun. And yes, after watching interviews with Chris Ruocchio, I loved how it definitely does inspire Sun Eater. So now that I've finished Book of the New Sun, I do see the inspiration, I want to say, that Ruocchio is getting from Sun Eater. So really cool stuff. I'm so glad Chris Ruocchio is a fan of Sun Eater I'm a fan of Book of the New Sun because, yes, I'm a fan of Sun Eater. And then what else I finished this past weekend was, Letter from Japan by Marie Kondo. This book was super short, so I finished it in like literally 2 days because I wanted to also finish it quick so my wife could read it. And because it's nonfiction, it was just easier to listen to, not have to pay quite so much attention to catch exact details of plots because this book is Marie Kondo of Tidying Up with Marie Kondo and the life-changing magic of tidying up the book, and then the Netflix series. This is a reflection where she looks back at kind of her crazy life from writing the life-changing magic of tidying up and then moving to the US for a while to do her Netflix and the general press tour. So it was a very interesting kind of retrospective, but how she frames it is how Japanese culture framed, like, gets contributed to her life, I guess you could say. So it was a study of Japanese culture. She's got, early chapters are on like kawaii culture, anime, and manga. So like how kawaii is a cultural phenomenon in Japan. That was just a fun, introspective of the history of kawaii and like why Japanese love cute things and how they use cute things to convey like, scary things, or they appear on like doors and warning signs. So and there's a section on like Shinto shrines, and she goes into religion and how this affects her own life, how it affects her philosophy on tidying and living, and how I guess like it's sort of like a subtle way to how to live your life. So it does sound a lot similar to a lot of other self-help books I read. Like the main idea I got was it would basically be more present and be more intentional, which is on brand for Marie Kondo, which is the spark joy is her whole KonMari method. So how a piece of clothes or an object would spark joy in your closet. It's kind of like, I guess, a grand, long way of saying live your life so that everything sparks joy. So just live more intentionally is like the one-word summary of the entire book. But anyways, it was a fun, short read, and I'm glad I got it from the library. It was a good, good short time. So then what I'm currently reading. So after reading a not self-help, but personal development style nonfiction book, I jumped back into Memories of Ice, book 3 of Malazan, Book of the Fallen. And that's why I started this weekend. So I was on my normal long bike ride. I put about 4 or 5 hours into Memories of Ice at, I think, 1.7 speed. So got a decent chunk done and absolutely loving Malazan. Malazan is so good. Book 3 is so good. I'm so happy to see Quickben again, to see Whiskey Jack and the rest of the Bridge Burners. You've got magic starting again. You've got, there's just so much going on in Book 3, Memories of Ice. We're already seeing tons of cool stuff going on with the larger world. The different factions are back from Book 1. So this is the callback. Now in the weird Book 1 and 2 were like maybe one long book, and then now Book 3 calls back to Book 1. So we're finally rejoining some of the characters in Book 1, directly seeing what the Bridge Burners are doing, and I love it. I am so excited to read Malazan, but the library. So what happened was, of course, I put a hold, a notification of when, it comes available in the library, let me know. And I got one of my holds. So I unfortunately paused my Audible purchase to read my temporary read via the library. And my next book, Book 2, that I'm starting in parallel this week, and I just started, I think last night I got the hold, is a really cool book actually that I saw via Reddit. Of course, someone made an impassioned post raving about this book, which prompted me to add it to my Libby queue, and that is Gunmetal Gods by the name, I'm going to forget, Zamil Akhtar. So I'm 21% of the book so far as of today's Tuesday. So I've been chugging through it already. It's pretty easy to read, which is a good thing. So after getting through Book of the New Sun, everything feels easy. Even Malazan, by comparison, yes, everything feels easy after reading Malazan, where you're really focused on POV switching and all the character switching within a single chapter, or Malazan, which is just a very prose heavy book. So Gunmetal Gods feels like a breath of fresh air, really easy to read. Similar, I guess, to Sun Eater. Sun Eater was very easy to read, but Gunmetal Gods is easy to read. It reminds me, I guess, of anything that I can connect it to, because the last book I read in this genre or a similar genre was The Adventures of Amina al-Sharafi. Of course, the reason I say that is because Gunmetal Gods is like a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy book. So it's very interesting to actually have a book set in a different world than Europe, like a medieval Europe sort of inspired world like Malazan or any other fantasy book. So it's really cool that they talk about jinns and their main characters like smoking hookah all the time. And it's just really cool to see the setting, haven't really got a ton of the gods yet. So like there's some battles and they're preparing for war. So it's got the standard, I guess, fantasy elements of politics and armies, and the main character is an older character, which is cool. I love that he's like, but also maybe similar to Amina al-Sarafi. The main character is an older character. He's like out of shape, past his prime, but he's called back for one more campaign by the king, the Shah. So it's an interesting story so far. Enjoying it, and based on the good reads, and the Reddit posts, the fact that everyone complains, quote unquote, that it's mostly world building, not characters. I thought that's perfect for me because I love world building. So I think I maybe have really high hopes, and I'm maybe looking at this favorably, because if it is a lot of world building, which is something I personally love more than characters, then this book should be everything I want. And so far, yeah, it's pretty good and pretty easy read. Not that I don't love the characters, and they're okay so far, but they're not like love all times. So yeah, that's what I read this past week, what I'm currently reading. And then yes, today, November 4th, I pre-ordered Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the full cast edition on Audible. So that, not whole, but pre-order came through. I tried the first chapter, and the first chapter was pretty interesting. It's very different because there's like sound effects and a background score, and you hear like the background world where they're sitting in a town. You hear cars driving by, elevators dinging, and the voices, the full cast, as Dumbledore is talking to Hagrid, it's different voices talking. So it's really cool. It's really well done. The sound is great. I was listening to it, of course, on my AirPods while I was walking at lunch, and it's a very immersive, well-recorded session too. So really cool stuff with Harry Potter. I've never read Harry Potter, so I've watched the movies, obviously, but never read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So I am excited to read for the first time Harry Potter via the full cast audio edition, Audible edition. So that is in the queue to read this week. Gunmetal Gods, Harry Potter, and yes, Malazan Book 3. Then switching gears to what I guess we just watched this past weekend. It was a 1, 2, 3 movie weekend. The first one we watched was Stolen Identity: The Last Hacker. This is a 2024 film from Japan. It was just okay. Don't worry about seeking out. Apparently, as I was looking into it, this is a movie in a series. So it's a series about the last hacker, or the series is Stolen Identity. This is The Last Hacker. The premise sounded interesting. It was about a hacker who is kind of taking revenge, and the hackers, it's like a Japan-Korea summit, and they're like hacking each other, and it was convoluted and not very good. It was almost felt like a made-for-TV movie, which maybe it was, but yeah, it was nothing really to write home about. That was Stolen Identity: The Last Hacker. Super short review. Next up we watched, because of all things, my son wanted to watch this, who is 14, so he wasn't even alive when this came out, but we watched The Truman Show from 1998. So throwback movie of the weekend was The Truman Show, which in 2025 still holds up. It's still a really good story, because I guess it's a human story. There's not a lot of crazy special effects. It's all about the characters, the story. Truman, everyone knows by now, Truman being trapped in a reality show, TV show, which is relevant nowadays with live streaming. That yes, if they redid this, it would probably be some sort of like live streaming thing versus with a Twitch chat, versus Truman Show, which is like a cable TV show, but still a relevant story, still good. Jim Carrey still great in the movie. So that was The Truman Show. And then lastly, back to Japan for another throwback movie, which is 2005's Linda, Linda, Linda. Movies, again, I hadn't watched it, but even though it was, I think, a sensation a while ago. It's about a group of high school girls that come together to form a band for the school festival. A little slow paced, I guess, because yes, it's 20 years old now, so the pacing not quite as tight as a modern film, but the characters were cute, in the sense that they do cute and funny things. I think my favorite character, of course, was Son-san. This is the exchange student from Korea who's part of the group, so she's learning Japanese and making kind of silly mistakes that a foreign exchange student would make. So yeah, she's just really wholesome, I guess, not cute, but wholesome in the movie. So I loved her character, Son-san's character. And then at the end, yes, they form the band, perform, and have a successful festival. So 3 interesting movies, nothing standout, so nothing super great. What are we watching outside of movies? Not a ton, but yes, I'm sporting the One Punch Man t-shirt from New York Comic Con 2025 because other things we're watching. Yes, One Punch Man season 3. It's still one frame man. So yes, there's still the complaints that the animation is definitely not up to speed to previous seasons, animation wise, but story wise, again, as I said this, I think last time I talked about One Punch Man, I still love the story because the manga story was so good. So just seeing anything animated, I have a soft spot for One Punch Man. Saitama Caped Baldy is always going to be my favorite. I love this arc. I really hope we get to the end of the Monster Association arc with Garo. There's so much cool stuff coming that I hope we see it animated. And then yes, in the hero genre, My Hero Academia, the final season, still good. The final season, not as maybe strong personally. The manga was pretty good. The final fights were okay, but just waiting to see it animated and wrapped up. So not super excited about My Hero Academia, but yes, it's another superhero show. And then lastly, to make a trifecta of superhero stuff, I started buddy watching the anime, or not really anime, but donghua, so Chinese animation of To Be Hero X. This was last season's one of the talked about, hyped up series. It's also a superhero show, but more like a subversion. It's not like satire or a parody, but maybe like an examination. It's hard to say exactly what it is of the superhero genre because it's sort of like a My Hero Academia-ish, where people can like earn their powers different ways. So they earn it through fame and through prestige. But it's also sort of like The Boys, where it's the dark side, but not quite as dark as The Boys. There's not like, at least not yet, like sexual violence or really gross violence yet. But there have been some scenes that are reminiscent of the gore and like the dark side or other side of superheroes in The Boys or Invincible. So those kind of shows that are show another not so wholesome Marvel side of heroes, but it's found pretty interesting so far. Only 3 episodes into To Be Hero X, but it has an interesting premise, especially in the first episode where another character takes on the role of a different character and they start gaining again powers through prestige, through like live streaming. So it's hard to say yet, how the season's going to shake out, but it's Siri, don't talk to me. So it's hard to say how the series is going to shake out at the end, but I'm looking forward to finishing up To Be Hero X. So that's, I guess, the only 3 shows we're watching right now for anime. And then I guess looking ahead, so the month of November, what am I going to read and watch? So what the reading plan is, looking at my Audible queue, what do I have waiting for me that is calling to get finished? I guess the first one is, of course, Cradle. I pre-bought and have all the Cradle series I've used previous credits on. And just, there's always something new, shiny object to watch or listen to instead of Cradle. So need to finish Cradle. Dungeon Crawler Carl, yes, I bought it last year during the winter sale. And because we're coming up on end of November is going to be Black Friday, I'm sure there's going to be a sale with Audible. So I already bought book 1 and I need to read book 1 of Dungeon Crawler Carl. I think I've been putting off because I have Cradle to read, which is a similar-ish kind of lit RPG style progression fantasy and a long series, beloved series. So I think that's why I've been a little hesitant to jump into Dungeon Crawler Carl. I guess I'm also hesitant because I know I'm going to like it. It sounds right up my alley if I liked Cradle and just that kind of story in general. So I need to read those. And looking at my library holds, what I had coming up soon, which is, some other series that I've been waiting on. So I have The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. Sounds interesting. I put it in the queue because, again, it was getting buzz on, I think, Reddit and online on BookTube, but it's a murder mystery with kind of like an academia, again, hence the scholar in the title. So immediately brought to mind just reading the synopsis, Robert Jackson Bennett's The Tainted Cup and A Drop of Corruption, which I loved. Read those this year and absolutely loved them. So I think I will like Ravenscolor if it's in the same kind of vibe as the Shadow Leviathan series with The Tainted Cup. So that is coming up available this week. So yes, I've got to power through Gunmetal Gods, Memories of Ice, which are 2 super long books, and Harry Potter. But what else is coming up in 3-ish weeks? Again, unless the library gets a copy early, I have Nemesis Games, Book 5 of The Expanse. So hopefully be getting to that at the middle of the month. And then according to Libby, 4 weeks, I have Howling Dark, Book 2 of Sun Eater. So hopefully towards the back half of the month, once I get caught up in these next couple weeks, I have The Expanse to look forward to and Sun Eater to look forward to. And then, yes, whatever else with the monthly credit I decided to get with Audible, which maybe is going to be book 4 of Malazan because I am so hyped with Memories of Ice. And I guess lastly, to wrap it up, what am I looking forward to watching? So switching back to visual media, I'm looking forward to, of course, end of November, Stranger Things Season 5. Yes, we know they're too old. Yes, it should have ended years ago. But yes, I love Season 1. Season 2, 3, they're okay, but they were good. Season 4 was pretty good. Of course, the Eddie scene with the guitar, great. Season 4 was back to form. So Season 5, high hopes for Stranger Things Season 5. I'm just looking forward to finishing it and seeing how the entire story wraps up, hopefully on a high note. And lastly, I guess, the only other thing I think like coming to streaming soon is hopefully Tron Ares, which has been out for a while now. Didn't do, I think, so hot, so it's probably going to make its way to streaming sooner rather than later. And I'm excited for that because I love Tron Legacy. I thought Legacy was great. So looking forward to Tron Ares. And then maybe coming by the end of the month will be the 2 anime movies, Chainsaw Man movie, the Rize arc, and Demon Slayer, which I think they're both still in theaters, so it might be delayed until like a Christmas thing. So it might be like a December watch for those movies. But that's what I am excited for. So this is a super long video because not just did I talk about my weekly stuff, but it was the whole month recap, looking forward to next month and a ton of things that I have going on in the bookish / visual world. So hope you enjoyed this talk of what I'm most excited about. Hopefully you saw my passion for what I'm most excited for. And I guess, spoiler, it's mostly Sun Eater. I am super excited for Sun Eater and Malazan, of course. I am really excited to read more Malazan. But my plea to you, the watcher / listener / viewer, is what did I miss? Is there something else that I really should read sooner rather than later besides Malazan and Sun Eater? There's so many books on my list of things I want to watch or listen to, read, that I keep adding them to my queue, adding them to holds and Libby, and there's just too many books and I don't have time. So if you can help with anything, like basically like something similar to Sun Eater or Malazan with that great world building, liking Gunmetal Gods, I know there's at least 2 or 3 more Gunmetal Gods in this series, so maybe that'll be something to start more of. But thanks for watching this video. Thanks for connecting with me. Thanks for sticking around to this end. Hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if there's some other things I should check out, and hope you have a great week and a great month of November. So thanks for watching and have a great month and weekend day. Talk to you later.